All right. Welcome back, everybody. Good evening. This is going to be episode number 79 for you. This is like the third episode this week on recruiting duty, but I took a break and I came back and someone asked me like, "Hey man, can you help me with being an introvert to becoming successful?" And I was like, you know what? I got a couple of people that I'll reach out to. And immediately they all were like, yo, I'll hop on. Right. So these introverted people were like, yo, I'll come on a podcast. And it's like, wait a minute, what did the recruiting do to you? So immediately when the person asked me, the first thought of my mind was like, yo, Eboch. Immediately I was like, bro, I remember meeting that dude. And then I remember him leaving the duty, and I feel like he was a very different person when he left recruiting duty. So I immediately hit up Eboch, and he was like, "Bro, let's do it Friday night, man." So here we are. We got Staff Sergeant Eboch with us, and I'm excited for the episode, man. So kind of introduce yourself for everybody, give them a background, your career before getting into recruiting duty, and then where you're at now, and then we'll go from there.
Sounds good. So good evening, everybody. My name is Staff Sergeant Eboch. Originally, I'm from New Jersey, which is where I wound up recruiting. So kind of worked out. I knew the area for the most part. Been in the Marine Corps now about 17 and a half years. Started out on the infantry, did 2 years with Security Forces Battalion up in Silverdale, Washington. Moved down to Pendleton, did 2 years with 1st Battalion, 1st Marines Charlie Company. After that, suffered a shoulder injury. Doctor said I might want to find a job that's not as physically intensive anymore as the infantry. And one of my original jobs that I wanted to do was to be a crew chief on helicopters. So basically working in the back, dealing with cargo, passengers, weapon systems, all that kind of stuff. So I re-enlisted at that point. This was like 2008, 2009 timeframe. Re-enlisted at that point. Went down to Marine Corps Air Station Miramar, started serving with HMH 462, the Screw Crew, as we were belovedly called. Did that for 10 years or so. I mean, I did some other minor little, jobs here and there, but mainly I was a crew chief. I worked in the back of the helicopter. Very small groups that I dealt with, small corps of pilots, small corps of aerial observers and other crew chiefs that I worked with that kind of kept me in a bubble, so to speak. So I did that, and then I finally got tagged for recruiting orders. And I'd heard all kinds of different things about recruiting. I'd heard the good stories. I'd heard the bad stories. I did have some trepidation going into recruiting because, like I said, most of my Marine Corps career has always been small groups. I get along great with 1, 2, 3 individuals. My core friend group is very, very small. And I don't really make new friends very easily. It's it just gets uncomfortable for me. So I kind of stick to smaller groups. So there was some trepidation going into recruiting duty. I wasn't sure what it was going to be like. Got out on the duty, and it was honestly, like, from what they taught us at the schoolhouse to what you hit on the streets, it's definitely a kick in the teeth. Like, you're not, they teach you the science at the schoolhouse, and then you got to figure out the art for yourself. And the art is different for every single individual.
Yeah.
So I got out on the duty, really not knowing what to expect. Got to RSS Toms River in New Jersey and started working. And it was very difficult for me in my first 6 months or so, 4 or 5 months, maybe 6. I struggled hard. I think I brought in maybe 1 or 2 contracts in that period of time. I was going to the stick training every month, and I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. It was very difficult for me. I was more comfortable at that time on the phone than I was in person.
Okay.
Because the phone, there was that level of separation between me and the other individual.
Okay.
Going up to talk to people in person kind of gave me anxiety attacks. Like, I would be standing there and wanting to go talk to them and just not sure how to even start or broach the subject. And it got to the point where I was going out to do area canvassing and I'd come back with nothing because I saw plenty of people.
Yeah.
but I couldn't go up and actually talk to any of them. It was a real struggle for me. Um, started, I talked to some of the other recruiters. I had several conversations with our recruiting instructors and our assistant recruiting instructors,
Mm-hmm.
and things started to get better, but it was definitely a mental strain. Like the end of the day, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to do anything. I would just go home, sit down on my Xbox for like an hour, and go sleep, wake up, and do the whole thing the next day. My wife actually got mad at me for that a couple times because I wouldn't call her. I didn't call her back. I just went home, went to sleep because I just could not bring myself to talk to anybody else. I was just so mentally exhausted at the end of the day. And I want to say my shift or the breaking point for me was my 6 month review. I can't even think of the word for it now.
Mm-hmm.
And our ARI was in the office. He was going over my numbers. He was looking at, we were doing some role playing, and he's like, I'm not sure I understand what really is going on right now. You have the skills, you have the knowledge. I don't know what's going on. So he made it very, very painful and very, very awkward for me that day. Basically, every hour on the hour, I had to call him and go over what I had done that last hour. And any person that I talked to, I had to take a selfie with and send it to him. And that added another level of anxiety to it. And I got into this thought process of, this is so miserable. I don't want it to be like this every single time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of just hit this breaking point for me where I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna fake it until I make it. And so I started approaching people. I started talking to people. Got told to piss off or not interested more times than I could even count. But as I continued to do that and continue to just force myself remembering what that day was like, it really helped me just kind of to break out of that shell and actually start talking to people and start going up and talking to these young kids or the parents or whoever it was that I excuse me, whoever it was that I ran into. I was like, I don't want to go back to doing that ever again. Because it was it was so awkward having to ask these like 17, 18-year-old kids, hey, real quick, I know we just talked for like 5 minutes. You said you're not interested, but can I get a picture with you? And it was one of those things where if I didn't have the picture, it didn't count.
Yeah.
So it was a very inventive way to get me to kind of step out of that shell and start making myself more comfortable talking to new people by being uncomfortable, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question then. Like, so what did because this is your 6 month mark, right? So in between the MOJT, you're at your 6 month of the 9 month MOJT process. And this ARI is having this conversation with you, and he's now making you do this uncomfortable thing. But what was the first 6 months like, as far as like training wise? Like, was there someone that was with you, like when you went out ACing? Like, was there someone that was allowing you to just continually come back with nothing? Like, what was the training process, or do you just think there really wasn't one, and like you kind of got like screwed? Like, what was that like?
I'm very hesitant to say that I got screwed,
Okay.
only because I look at it as the fact of, at this point, I was a 13-year veteran in the Marine Corps. I've been to combat. I've been in a lot of uncomfortable situations before. And as a staff NCO, we're expected to, to recognize our own faults and move forward. So I won't say that I got screwed, but I did get thrown into the deep end. There really was no training.
Yeah.
Other than the PAR training that we went through.
Yeah.
And then, but even the PAR training that we went through was very different.
Yeah. Because you're sitting at a headquarters in a building behind the table, and that's it. Like you're not out there actually area canvassing or something like that. And the reason why I bring this up, right, and this question up is because, like you just said, right. So you just said your answer was, well, I'm a 13-year staff sergeant. I'm a veteran. I've been in uncomfortable positions before. That's our way of thinking as Marines. We're like, oh yeah, we'll just figure it the fuck out. Like, but the reality of it is that you've never been a salesman before, and this has never been your job before. So like a big thing for me is that we have, especially when it comes to from someone who's an introvert, like if you're extroverted and that's just who you are naturally, then you come on recruiting duty, bro. You talk to anybody you want, it's whatever. Like people come on the duty and they freaking, they're the flavor of the week and they start making it every day, like they're killing it. But there's some people who just aren't like that. So the point that I'm making is that yes, you're a staff sergeant at 13 years, but at the end of the day, you've never been on recruiting duty before. And your station commander, your ARI, every Friday, what are we doing? We're doing numbers. We have to do our weekly numbers. And then what happens every phase line? We have to do our numbers. So people were looking at your numbers for 6 straight months. And no one was like, you know what, hey, why don't we get somebody out there? And maybe they were, but it's like the reason why I'm having these conversations, especially with people that are introverted, is because a lot of the times people will be in the back and the behind the scenes, and they may be like, bro, Eboch's a piece of shit, man. He's not putting it in the work. And the RS level, everyone across the RS, they're looking at your numbers and they see a 0, and they don't know you. They don't know that you're really trying every night, and they just think that you're just some dude who doesn't want to work. But then realistically, it's actually a lot of it is lack of training and lack of know-how, and it's not lack of fortitude, right? But then at the same time, like you said, you had the accountability part where like you were like, yeah, I did go out a lot of times and I just walked by people and I didn't say anything. But the thing is, though, is that there was somebody who was allowing you to walk by those people, and that shouldn't have been a thing. Like somebody should have been with you, and when they saw you walking away, like they should have been like, hey, go talk to this person. So like the fact that like it took 6 months for an ARI to have to put you in a position like that is kind of fucked up.
Yeah, and like I don't want to really because the original station that I got to,
Mhm.
um, I was filling in a gapped sector, and the station commander used to have that sector.
Mm.
So my first like week that I was out there, he took me around and showed me the areas, introduced me to the people at the school. But after that, I was on my own.
Yeah.
There was the A/ in the office um, was not helping me out, and no fault to the guy. I still talk to him. He's one of my friends, but he had his own that office initially when I first got there had a lot of internal issues.
Yeah.
As people moved on and the new group came in, things changed.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
started we started doing training together as a team. There wasn't a It was more of a family environment
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
than a I'm just here. And I mean, like I can remember times trying to make phone calls, and I'm sitting there at my desk and I'm making phone calls, and one of the other recruiters in the office is bouncing a freaking tennis ball off the wall 3 feet above my head while I'm trying to make phone calls. And it was just a very uncomfortable.
Mm.
And if I really think about it and I look back, there may have been a small petty part of me that was like, man, screw these guys. They're not doing anything to really help me. So why should I really put in the effort to help them? And I'm not going to say that's the right attitude. I can't say that it
Yeah.
was my entire attitude, but there may have been a small part was like, man,
Oh
these
yeah,
guys, like,
there definitely was, because I remember there was times where I'd come by the office sometimes, and you would be like that. You'd be like, "Yo, f these people, f everybody around us, screw everybody." But while you were having that conversation and you were saying those expletives, you were still making TCs. Like you were making phone calls, but you were freaking damning everybody to hell.
And that was then that was one of the big jokes in the office after we got the new crop, and the group that I spent my longest time on recruiting with was, one of the guys made the joke because I got off the phone with somebody and the person on the other end had like cursed me out, or I don't even remember, just been super rude. So I hang the phone up and I vented for like 30 seconds, picked up the phone, dialed the next number. It was, "Good evening, this is Staff Sergeant Eboch with ES." And they looked at me after that phone call. They're like, "Dude, how did you do that?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "You just went from like super pissed off to salesman voice just like that." And it was kind of the joke. But when I got that new team that came in around me, the environment in the office changed. And we had two guys who were extremely extroverted and very outgoing, very charismatic individuals.
Yeah.
And we kind of filled gaps in each other's strengths and weaknesses. Like, the one time they told me that one of my station commanders told me that I was his ringer in the office. And what he meant by that is, when he had this kid who's in there who thinks he knows everything, he's like, "I bring you in." He's like, "Because you just had this ability to pick apart everything that they were saying and show them how everything they were saying was, like, this is not reality and not really going to work."
Yeah.
And the other guys would help me with that more charismatic, outgoing. I mean, I can remember there's a couple kids I put that are in the Marine Corps now, that the final sale and the final yes was not my effort alone. It was a combination of other people really getting in there and helping me out. And that's, I want to say that's what helped make me successful, was I was able to start playing to my strengths. And because during that first 6 months, I was having interviews. I had interviews, I was bringing in interviews, and I just couldn't make any of them stick. But there was it was always just me by myself.
Yeah. So you didn't have, so the environment, so it sounds like the environment was everything. And which rightfully so it is in any condition, right? Like, the environment means everything, because like I can speak from this as well, like with you guys, like your team, when the one that you're talking about, like you could walk into that office and you could feel the brotherhood and the family. And I remember, like, when COVID had just hit off, we were all talking like the different offices and stuff, and you guys were talking about like the TC power hours that you guys used to do, and like you guys like would come, like, so can you kind of talk about that? Because I think that what that did, at least like when you guys started talking about that our office started doing it, and then other offices started doing it, and I think the way that you guys did that was amazing, because it brought the office together, and then it also provided training to everybody, and it wasn't just like a Friday thing, it was an everyday thing. So if I don't know if you remember, but like, can you kind of like describe that?
So the TC Power Hour came about from one of the other recruiters' recommendations. And basically what we would do is we'd start at the top of the hour, and then for that next hour, it was just phone calls. Personal phones were put in a separate drawer. Nothing else was done but making phone calls. And during the phone calls, we were also listening in to the other recruiters as they would talk. And so at the end of that hour, I mean, we'd put in, 50, 60 phone calls, depending on somebody picked up or not. But at the end of that power hour, we would sit there and then talk about what happened, because, I would hear him say, hear one of the other recruiters say something, or they would hear me say something, and then we would talk about, hey, maybe is there a better way to say it? And it was everything from your initial introduction to, talking about the addressing the disinterests and everything else like that. And that helped us learn and adjust. And we even sat down at one point, we wrote scripts. Like, actually, like, if you ever, for those who've seen The Wolf of Wall Street, he talks about this, this script right here is how you're going to sell to these whales. We had scripts, and we used them, and it helped, especially somebody like me who kind of struggled with what to say on the phone. Having that script helped me figure out where to go, what to say, what to do. And then I was able to start designing it around my own personality. and my own skills. But that power hour, it was great because we would do that for an hour and then we would stop, talk about it, go outside and smoke, sit there and play on the phones for a couple minutes, reset ourselves, and then we would go back in and do it. Because during COVID, phone calls were all we had.
Yeah.
We couldn't get into the schools. We couldn't talk. Nobody wanted to talk to you on the streets. Nobody wanted to get close to anybody.
No one wanted to get away from me.
Exactly. So phone calls were all we had. So we had, phone calls and then digital communication, which I struggled a lot with the DCs because I'm not a real big Instagrammer, Facebook. That's all. I'm 37, or no, I'm 35, turning 36 this year. That's kind of came a little bit too late in my life for me to be really good at it. Some of the younger recruiters that we had who grew up with Instagram, they had, amazing results with DCs. I never did.
No.
So phone calls were all I had, and having that power hour and then talking about it as a team. Or even, there was a couple times where phones are getting tossed across the room because I pick up and the parent on the other end speaks, is only speaking Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish. So I turn around to the recruiter in our office who spoke Spanish. I was like, "Hey, man, heads up!" Toss him my phone. Yeah. He tossed me his phone, and I'd start calling from his list while he was talking to that parent. Or we'd have the kid that was, a wrestler or a football player. We had another, real athletic dude in our office, and I'd toss the phone to him. "Hey, man, here, talk to this kid."
Yeah.
When it came to like the nerd stuff, it was, Star Wars and all that kind of stuff. That was my domain.
Yeah.
But the environment of the office really helped me get out of my shell, and really helped me because it got to the point where I didn't want to let my team down. I didn't want to fail them because they were busting their butts just as hard as I was. And so I started it became easier for me because, again, it became less about me as an individual, and it became about the team and the office. And when it's about the team and the office, it was a lot easier for me to get out of my own way and ignore the discomfort or the anxiety because I'm thinking about something, is bigger than me. It was my team.
Yeah.
And that environment really is what helped really come into where I was. Because even after my 6 month, my 9 month, when the ARI came in, at this point I had like 3 months in a row of 4 contracts per month with stuff still working. And he came in, he was like, I think my assessment that day was like 15 minutes long. He was like, "You're good. You got this. Keep doing." He's like, "I'm glad you see the 180 that you've made."
Yeah.
And so that kind of, and that team at that point, as we changed and got a new station commander, and the group that was there really kind of came together, really helped me out, get out of my shell and talk to it. And now, I've been back in the fleet now since like November of 21, I think is when I checked into my new command. I'm with HMH 361, the Flying Tigers. So we're a CH-53 squadron. And I got there and I was dead set. I was like, I'm going back to flight line, going back to my roots. I'm going back to working on helicopters and getting dirty. And I'm standing there in maintenance control, which is like the nerve center for the maintenance department. And at this point, there was like 4 or 5 of us in that, 4 or 5 other staff NCOs and 1 sergeant in that office. And 3 of the 4 were all recruiters. And so we were kind of talking about the duty and stuff like that. And the maintenance chief comes up to me and he was like, "Hey, I know this is not what you wanted, but I'm putting you in maintenance control." And that was, again, another brand new situation. I've never been involved in something like that before. I've always been the guy out there on the line doing the work, not the guy planning everything and directing everything. And so coming from recruiting duty and coming from that situation of being an introvert and having to learn how to talk to people and learn how to get my intent and what I want across to somebody helped me out in there. I'm now the staff non-commissioned officer in charge of the work center. So it's the introverted thing is kind of a thing of the past for me now. Mainly because of recruiting duty. Recruiting duty kind of just shocked it out of me, and it was like, this isn't the way to work. This is the way it's going to be from now on.
Wow, that's crazy.
Now, at the same time, there's still, some days I'm just like, yep, I'm done. I'm going home. I'm going to sit down in my office, play Xbox, and I'm not doing anything else, talking to anybody else. But learning to develop the relationships and to relate to the kids that we were trying to put in the Marine Corps helped me learn to relate to the others that I was working with when I got to my new command, and helped me kind of build those relationships with them so that we can make the team successful. We can make the squadron successful because we all are working together, and there's not really there's going to be arguments, but it allows me to get my intentions across and what I need to do. And it's a little bit easier because as a maintenance controller, I've got 8 different work centers that I'm responsible for directing, like the overarching idea. So I'm having to deal with 70, 80 different Marines, talking to them through their desk sergeants and everything else like that. So if I was still the same introvert that I was before I went on recruiting duty, I wouldn't be successful at what I'm doing because I wouldn't want to go talk to them. And I just kind of, trust that what I told them at the meeting is enough and moving on. But because of that, it's allowed me to be successful. It's allowed me to relate to the individuals. And I think that recruiting duty really helped me kind of figure that out and how to talk to other people and how to give them, the reasons why.
Yeah. So what would you say it was that taught you that? Like, how did you, I understand that a lot of it was the environment, but like, what was it that made this switch? Like, what was it around you that was happening? Like, what training was it? Or was it just simply like you just figured it out and it clicked? Like, what advice do you have for somebody who currently is, they're in those shoes, right? They just hit their 3-month eval, their 6-month eval is coming up. They have no contracts, they're introverted, they're trying to get out of their shell. Maybe they don't have enough training, or like, what would you say is the best advice for that situation?
Honestly, I would say to ask for help. Talk to the other recruiters, the senior guys that have been there. Figure out what they do. Watch how they work. One of the big things that really made me successful with ACing was we started doing tag teams. 2 recruiters would go out together, and it wasn't just one man out there alone and afraid. You were there and you had somebody else with you. And as Marines, we have our, it's the way we're trained. We're trained to work as a team. So when you have somebody on your left or on your right, you're more confident and you feel a little bit more capable of doing what you need to do. So I think the big thing that really helped me was the new environment and some of the new things that we started doing, like the power hours or ACing in teams. Not going out by yourself, and being able to play off of each other's strengths and weaknesses. And for me, a lot of it was watching these other recruiters and mimicking what they did until it felt natural for me, forcing myself to do what they did, to approach people the way they approach people, to talk to people the way they talk to people, even though it was very forced. Through repetition, it became habit. It became part of who I was. And so I think that's really the biggest thing that kind of helped me was I wasn't, after a certain point, I was no longer alone and afraid out there. I had other recruiters that I could learn from. And that we all learned from and we're able to work together and make things work. Like I said, honestly, it's the biggest thing I could tell them is, and I know it's going to be hard, but you have to force yourself to be uncomfortable to get comfortable. The only way you can learn to swim is to get in the water.
Yeah.
But it does help to ask for help. Maybe not go all the way up to the RI right away, but ask the other recruiters in your office, because almost every office is going to have that one rock star who just, is just crushing it every month. Ask them, hey man, can we go AC together? Can you listen in on my phone calls while I'm making phone calls? Or, can you share some advice with me? Because everybody's AO and everybody's area is going to be different. And that's one of the cool things about recruiting is everybody's area is different. But as you begin to see how they operate in their area, you can then start using that. And then when you see, okay, this didn't work, but what if I tweak it a little bit and make it do it like this? And you can figure it out. It is difficult. I did see a couple of introverted recruiters who unfortunately could not adapt. And it was rough watching it happen, because I saw myself in them, and I tried to, there's one of them that I tried to help as best I could, and I just wasn't able to get through to him.
Yeah.
And he just continued to struggle and continued to struggle and continued to struggle. But he was a good dude, great Marine. Recruiting duty is really one of those duties, and it's exactly like they tell you at the schoolhouse. It's one of those duties that shows what kind of a Marine you really are. Are you a Marine who can adapt to a new situation, who can learn and grow, or are you not? And some of them, and I'm not trying to slam them. If if there's that Marine out there that's listening to this thinking, oh, well, that was me. I'm not trying to slam you. You rock star at your job in the Marine Corps. We need those. But being put into a brand new situation, some people are able to succeed, some people can't. And it's just the way it's just the way life is. But ask for help. I didn't ask for help my first 6 months, and I struggled hard. The biggest, actually, I can say there was one other thing that really led me to be successful. So the month after my 6-month eval, I put up 5 contracts that month. And because these were people that I had been working, they were medical waivers, or they were guys that were studying for the ASVAB, or they were tattoo waivers that all just came together at one point. So I wrote 5 contracts, contracted 3 of them, and had 2 left over. So when I went into the next month, I was already mission complete. And the difference in the way I felt, the pressure that I felt at work was completely different. I no longer felt that you have to find something, because that makes you desperate. Yeah. And when you're desperate, the kids can see it.
Yeah.
So I caught that break, and I just started rolling. I mean, I was writing 2 or 3 contracts a month. So I was always having something rolling into the next month. And so when the next month came, I wasn't as panicked, because I had started to build up momentum.
Yeah.
And when I didn't have that stress, I became more relaxed when I was talking to the kids. I wasn't frantic. I wasn't like overbearing. I was much more relaxed going on with what was happening. And it really made the difference. I at one point in time, I don't know if you remember this or not, but I was out for a whole month because I had to get shoulder surgery.
Yes, I do remember that.
So when I came back from shoulder surgery, I started struggling again because I lost all my momentum. And then COVID hit, which is going to sound really messed up that I say this, but COVID, the month of April 2020 was kind of a blessing. And what I mean by that is, for the first time in recruiting history, we had a 0 mission that month.
Yeah.
And that gave me the breathing room to get myself back into a momentum and to get myself back to rolling. I also got moved to a new AO because we had a recruiter coming in who had graduated from one of the schools that I was working at. So I took over for for at the time, our A gunner who was leaving. I took over his area in Toms River proper. And it was a new area and with that new area came a little bit more excitement, because now at this point it's like they're new people. I don't really know any of these people, and it kind of, the attitude was really different than what I expected it would have been. And my attitude was, okay, this is something new, because at this point I had been rolling, been doing well, so I wasn't nervous about the new situation. I was like, okay, this is a new area. They don't know who I am. It's a chance for me to start brand new, and that really worked for me. And that was where I became as successful as I was in my last, I think, a year and a half on the duty in a brand new area. Just working it, and our station became very, very successful.
Yeah.
And we were just rolling. And so as the station became successful and things were going good, the team inside the office, one guy has a bad month. Hey, I've got 3-4 kids going up this month. I got this covered. Don't worry about it. Just focus on next month. And so that same attitude, again, of that family environment that I was talking about at the beginning, really helped out, because if I was having a rough month or having a rough time with something, I could go to the other guys in my office and be like, look, I'm struggling right now with defining people, but I've got stuff lined up for next month. I got a kid that, the medical waiver's coming back or whatever. And they're like, hey, yeah, we got it this month, but you got to write heavy next month. Easy.
Yeah.
And as a team, we made that work. But it's the best. Like I said, I'm going to keep hammering on this: ask for help. And if your station, if your A gunner doesn't want to help you, your station commander doesn't want to help you, then go to go up the chain. That's what the ARIs are there for.
Yeah. I think like everything that like I'm gathering from this is really just like mentality, office, like the environment in the office, and just training one another and calling each other out and working amongst each other and making each other better, and iron sharpens iron. Like, and I think that like when offices are failing, I think that that's a huge portion of it, is that like these offices aren't teams, they're just RSSs. And you're not looking at it like that. Like, you're not looking at it like, what, hey man, like next month I got this and this, I got this one, you got it next month. And that was something that like I always, like when I did come by, like when I was getting off the duty and I came by and I worked with you guys, I think for like a month, like watching you guys operate. I was on the duty for 4 years at this point, but like watching you guys operate was very different than I had seen in 3 other RSSs that I had worked in. And it was very different because, like I said, like you guys were like the recruiters were training the recruiters. Like you guys were like, but at the same time, it's like, and I think this is where a lot of teams fail, is that they're afraid to call out. Like I feel like when we go on recruiting duty, we kind of like lose that Marine Corps mentality sometimes. And it's like bro, you're a Marine on recruiting duty. Like if so and so is not doing what they gotta do, call them out and like and make it a competition, like and give them the training, or say, hey man, like how can I help you or whatever. Because I feel like a lot of times what happens is that recruiters, they go from being stellar in their job in the Fleet Marine Force, they come out on recruiting duty and they're not good at it, and then they fall into the slump, and then they just write zeros, and then it becomes a lifestyle for them, but no one in the office is helping them or even seeing like, hey, what's going on, how can I help you. But like you guys had like, and that's how your first environment was. But then your new environment, you had new Marines come in and things started to change, and it was all because of the attitude of the office, the environment in the office. And it was just like it just like it flipped a switch. And then you, like you said already, you then realized that like, yo, this is bigger than me. Like it's not just my career anymore, it's these Marines careers, it's their families, and I gotta help them. Like it's not about me writing a zero, it's about me taking away from them. And that just kind of transitioned you into being better. So what would you say, like when it comes to like making it work, what worked for you the most? Like, were you like kind of always a TCer? Did that kind of keep its way? Like, what was the best? Like, how did you, like, what tool did you use to make the best out of your time on the duty?
So TCing started out being I don't want to say my best, but my favorite. Only because, like I said, initially I was introverted and it gave me that level of separation. Um, Eventually, because like I said, for most of 2020, ACing was pretty much out of the picture.
Mm-hmm.
So the TCing became what I got good at.
Yeah.
But TCing was hard because you're getting parents' phone numbers or the phone numbers don't work, and so you're kind of just you're struggling, you're trying to find it. I started with going with my poolies, having them, because I would give them one of the, have them look through the lists and be like, oh, you know this kid? Yeah. Oh, do you have a cell phone number? Yeah, I got a cell phone number. Okay, cool. Let me get it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd call the kid, call the kids through their cell phone numbers. It ACing, I actually started getting good at ACing in the schools and talking with kids. At the lunch tables, because I would just go plop myself down at a random lunch table and start chit chatting with kids. And most of the time, and what I found really worked for me was I would talk to the kids and I wouldn't even start talking about them joining the Marine Corps. I'd sit down and ask them, hey, how's everybody doing today? And then inevitably they would start asking questions. They'd ask questions about my ribbons or the wings that I had on my chest. And that opened the conversation up to talking about the Marine Corps. But there was a couple of them that I didn't even bring up them joining. And then as I'm walking away, they're like, well, aren't you going to ask me if I want to join? And I'll be like, well, do you want to join? Yeah, I'd like to talk about it.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
The other thing that really helped was I was always honest. And what I mean by honest, because recruiters are honest, but I didn't sugarcoat anything. Kids would ask me, well, what's boot camp like? Boot camp is going to suck. It's going to be 13 weeks. It's going to be miserable. I can show you how to make it easier and how to get through it, but it's always going to be hard. And that really helped me because I had one kid that I put in the Marine Corps. And then the next thing I know, his twin brother, his dad's telling me, oh, I want you to talk to his brother. So I talked to his twin brother, and his twin brother joined the Marine Corps. And the big reason that dad was willing to bring the other brother in was because I was honest. And he could tell I wasn't trying to BS him. I wasn't, trying to pull a bait and switch. I was honest with him. And I think I kind of got off topic from your question.
No, not at all, man. Because it's like what you're saying makes sense, because I think a lot of people have that problem, right? Is that a lot of people have this idea that, like, oh, in order to be a good recruiter, in order to get numbers, I have to lie and I have to fabricate and this the third. And it's like, no, bro. Like, if you just, and me, man, like, you saw me on the phones, you saw me AC, you saw me do interviews, you saw me do, briefs. Like, I'm the real as they come, and I'm like, bro, this is how life is, bro, and that's it. And like you're saying too, like, I think a lot of what happens is, and you said this earlier on, is about addressing disinterest, right? A lot of people's problem, especially on the telephone call, is they avoid disinterest. As soon as the disinterest comes, they're like, oh, all right, I'm gonna hang up, and that's it. Like, and that's why a lot of people are like, oh, TCs don't work. And the funny thing is that, like, this interview, you're saying that you worked heavily on TCs, and for a while it was your favorite thing, and then COVID hit and you had to do TCs and it worked. And then the interview before you, dude said the same exact thing about telephone calls. And that's why I always say it's funny, because people will always say that telephone calls do not work. They'll say it all the time. They'll be like, oh, if a 12 tells me to make phone calls, they're so out of touch. No, there's a tool, and you do not know how to use the tool. It just because you don't know how to use a hammer doesn't mean that the hammer is useless. It just means that you don't know how to use it, bro. And that's what it is, man, is that people are afraid to address this interest. Like, I'll be honest, like, and I always used to get in trouble for this, because I called it, I would say, battle disinterest. And 12s would correct me and they'd be like, that's not what it is. And I'd be like, no, it is. To me, it is. because I'm going, like, you have a disinterest, I'm going to battle the hell out of you because I need to find out what this interest is, and I need to overcome it, and I need to address it head on. So to me, that's a battle. And I want to win the battle and in turn bring you with me and move forward. And that's the thing, is that a lot of people, they don't want to do that. And then, like you were saying about the area canvassing, a lot of people, they immediately start with, and even I'll be honest, I was at fault for this for a long time. Immediately, hey, do you want to be a Marine? Hey, do you want to be a Marine? No, man, just sit at a freaking lunch table and be awkward. Like, just sit down at the lunch table and then don't even say anything, and then let them talk to you, or just start roasting them. Like, you start making fun of them and joking with them, and they'll be like, "Yo, this dude's real chill." And then all of a sudden you become one of them, and it's fine because you're already a sore thumb. And number two, they also think of you like you're not normal. Like, everybody has this idea that, like, once you become a Marine, you're no longer a human. Like, you no longer have feelings, you no longer do things. I had a kid tell me when I was leaving, I was with Ramos, and me and him were ACing, and we left at GameStop, and I had just bought Borderlands 2. And he said, this kid came up to me and was like, "Yo, you guys play video games?" And me and Ramos were like, "What?" We were like, "Of course we do. Why wouldn't we?" And they were like, "Well, you have time for that?" And we were like, "Yeah, like, we have lives, like, we." And that's the thing, is that they don't understand that. So when you break it down like that, and you start talking about video games, movies, and whatever you did over the weekend, and you just start bullshitting with them, and you start talking about life, then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, this dude's actually really chill." And then when you don't even bring up the Marine Corps, like you said, they start coming at you and asking you questions. And the same thing with influencers, right? If you're in a school, and a lot of people have a problem with this, that people go to the school and they always ask for something. Every time they're in the school, they're asking for something. They're asking for transcripts. They're asking for this to get signed. They're asking for a table set up. Bro, when was the last time you just went to the school to say hello? When was the last time you went to the school just to say hi to Miss So and So and just see how her day was, and then follow up with her? Oh, you know that she had a wedding this weekend. Hey, go on Monday and say, "Hey, how was that wedding?" That, because she's gonna be surprised that you remembered that, and then that's going to open up your opportunities in that school, and it's also gonna just show her that you're a real life human being, because she may be the person who's in your way in these situations. But if you actually start talking and learning more and building more and more rapport, like, and that's the thing too, like, you said this earlier on, like, scripts, you brought up the scripts. The last interview that I did last night, I'm on Wednesday. He said the same thing. He's like, "Bro, I'm the worst introvert ever." He's like, "But guess what? I started using scripts, and I did for the whole 3 years I was on the duty." And he was like, "Bro, that saved me." And the crazy part is like, that's the basic stuff. And we always forget, like, bro, just stick to the basics, man. And then you make a better script, or whatever. As you grow, you add this to it, you add that to it. But, like, and I love that you brought that up too, because people are afraid to just do things basically. Like, they think that they have to be some, like, Don Juan, like, crazy person. And it's like, nah, bro, just chill, make a phone call, relax, and just make it easy as possible. And people think way too much into the conversation piece. Like, they just think too much into it. And that's why when you break down the script and you start looking at it and stuff like that, it helps you not think ahead. For me, it didn't work. I'll be honest. For me, a script never worked because it caused me to think ahead. Because I would look
Mhm.
at it and be like, "Oh, where am I at?" Like, and I would lose my place on the script, and I'd be like, "Wait, am I here? Am I here? Am I here?" So, like, for me, a script didn't. It never worked. But there are people that it works wonders for. So one of the last things that I kind of want to ask you is, like, mental health on the duty. Like, how did you deal with that? Like, how did you deal with getting, because I know you said earlier, like, a lot of times, like, you were just done with the day. You wanted nothing to do with anybody. You wanted to just go home and curl up in a ball. So, like, what would you say your mental health looked like, the 3 years you were on the duty, and what advice would you give to anybody that you wish you had when it came to that?
So when I initially got out there, so my situation on on the duty was interesting. I'm sure you know this. Most of the command knew this. Um, I'm married, but my wife didn't come with me. I spent 3 years in New Jersey, only seeing my wife every 6 months or so. Because of her job out here in California, she didn't. She just didn't have that option. She had to stay here. And on one level, that was really good for me. And she can't ever hear this podcast because she'll yell at me for it. But on one level, it was really good for me because on those nights when I was exhausted, I could just go home and relax and just sleep. Um, but it was also rough because when I needed that external support, that someone just to get a hug from and just it wasn't there.
Yeah.
Excuse me. The best thing that I like, the thing that I could say is don't give up your free time. And I got into I have hobbies, so to keep my mental health strong, I kept doing those hobbies. For me, it was building models. So I was buying models, building the models in my off time, or playing Xbox. Um, it, I just you have to find something. You can't, always think about the duty and what you have to do. The other thing that really helped me out, as weird as this is gonna sound, but I would go to sporting events at my schools. But I would go in what I call ninja mode. I'd go in civilian attire. Like if they had a football game on a Thursday night and I was all set for Friday, I'd leave work, change into civilian attire, and drive down to one of the football games, sit there and watch the football game. And I had parents or teachers that would recognize me and they're like, "Why aren't you in uniform?" I'm like, "Because I'm off. Like I'm just here because I want to watch a football game." And I wouldn't talk to anybody about the Marine Corps. And the funny thing is that worked because I had kids coming up to me the next day. "Hey, we saw you at the game." "Yeah. Well, what were you doing there?" "Supporting my team." "What do you mean? What is I doing there?"
Yeah.
And again, like you said, it gets them to see you as a person and not just as the Marine recruiter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what you said about the schools is the same thing. I like, especially over the summers, because I found this out, while I was on the duty, the guidance counselors and the secretaries, they work 4 days out of the week over the summer. Monday through Thursday, they're in the office. So I would stop by random days of the week with a box of donuts and a thing of coffee from Dunkin' Donuts, drop it off, and they'd be like, "Oh, what do you need?" "Nothing. Have a good day." And I'd leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that helped because then I had a guidance counselor call me. "Hey, I got a kid here that has no idea what they're looking to do in their future. Would you come in and talk to them?"
Yeah. Bro, those are the best, man. Those are the best when you really actually get like, and that's how you know. And I hate to say like I don't want to say this and people take it wrong. Like I was gonna say that's when you know you're good, but the reality of it is that's when you know you're a human being. Is like when you can literally just be a human being, be personable, and not be oorah Marine Corps all the time, and let them know that like, hey, I'm Doug, right? I'm Timothy or whatever the hell your name is, and you go into a school and you go in there and you're just a human being, and you let them know like, yeah, yes, I'm Staff Sergeant Bennett. But I'm also Doug, and I do this on my off time, and I have a family, and I have 3 kids, and da 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 da. Because when you start doing that and you relate to them, then that breaks down barriers because again like when what people don't understand is that as Marines, when we've been doing this for 10, 12 years or more, by the time you get on recruiting duty, this is all you know, especially active duty Marines.
Yeah.
That's all you know. But the civilian, they don't know that. This isn't a normal thing to them. So for them, all they know, though, is that you fight wars. The only job is infantry, and you never see your family, and you don't have hobbies because you're always training for war, and you don't live in a house or you don't live in a barracks, you live in the desert. Like these are things that they legitimately truly believe, and that's because of movies, video games, and everything, right? So and this is something that I always try to stress to people, you as a Marine Corps recruiter, you're the only thing that they know for the first time ever firsthand. So
Mm-hmm.
the way that you interact with them is going to determine their views their viewpoint on the Marine Corps forward. And that's the biggest thing is that, and then when you leave as a recruiter, are they going to remember your name? Because there's, bro, I've been I've been in Monmouth County for 12 years, and bro, I was saying this in an episode a while back. I bump into people and they still ask me, hey, how's Mendoza? And I'm like, Gunny Mendoza, he's been gone for 6 years. But guess what? They still ask about him. They still say, "Hey, how is he? How is Jason?" And it's because he was they knew him by his first name because he was a good person who cared about the community and who cared about the students. And that's the thing is like you'll have guidance counselors reach out to you when they know that you're not just about numbers, like, when they know that you're going to sit down and just talk to a kid about life and that you're going to counsel him and that you're going to help him. Maybe the Marine Corps is not the best option for him. Maybe it's not. Maybe there is a better opportunity for him. But when they see that you are more about the opportunity and about the community, then that opens up more for you and it gives you an ability to work a lot less harder.
Yeah, I 100%. And that was something that kind of evolved with me, and it comes back to probably the fact that the Marine Corps has been at this point a couple months short of half of my life. And I started really, as we talk to these, we tell these people, the Marine Corps is a family and blah blah blah. And I started making it more about them than about me, and talking to them about how, caring about the kid, not my numbers. Like if I made mission that month or I didn't, fine. But I know, hey, I helped this kid become successful. Like I talked to kids. I had 2 kids, and this was probably one of the coolest experiences. Well, a lot of cool experiences, but this one was really interesting because it came at a time when I needed it the most. I had these 2 kids that I talked to during COVID that were dead set on college. Dead set. We're going to college. That's all we're going to do. We're going to college. And I was talking to them, and I saw a lot of myself in them, in the fact of I hate school. I was not a student. I didn't really like being in school. And I was like, look, man, college is just not, like I'm telling you right now, man, you go to college, pursue your education. But I'm telling you, it's not what you think it is.
Yeah.
End of the first semester, I get 2 separate phone calls. Hey, Staff Sergeant Eboch, this is blank. Oh, hey, man, what's going on? Yeah, college is not what I thought it was. Can I come in and talk to you more about the Marine Corps? Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're both in the Marine Corps now.
Yeah.
Because I didn't push them at that point. I was like, all right, man, do you want to go to school? Best of luck to you. Let's talk about how you're going to pay for it or what you're going to be studying.
Mm-hmm.
And it became, and it wound up, like I said, these kids came back, they contracted ship. They're both Marines now. I still talk to both of them.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things that it was, I just didn't push them. They saw me then as an actual person.
Yeah.
As like you said.
Yeah, and that's important too, because a lot of what happens too is that people end relationships. A lot of people, it's like someone will come in the office, you'll do an interview, you go for the committal, the kid will say no, and then you'll get well butthurt about it, and when your boss says, hey, what happened? You're like, oh, that kid's a bitch. And then it's like, nah, bro, you're a bitch. It's you're the one that's a bitch. And then, the reality of it is that if you end it, you don't have to end things. That's the whole point of the follow-up, right? Like a lot of times people aren't systematic. But if you actually just do the follow-up and you're a normal human being and you're just like, listen, bro, I get it. You know what? At this time in life, this isn't for you. But let's just talk about, this. Okay. All right. Tight. All right. Hey, man, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to follow up with you here in like the next 3 months just to see how things are going, bro. And that's it. And you let them know. And then 3 months from now, you follow up with them. You see how or if you see them on the street, you're going to see them in your AO again. You're going to see them again. They live in the community that you work in. You're going to see them at ShopRite. You're going to see them at the movies. You're going to see them wherever the hell you're going. And you don't have to end the relationship. You keep it. You mend it. And then this way, even though they didn't join the Marine Corps, they didn't become Marines, they know somebody who did. or they know somebody who might want to. And then when they're at a party or they're at an event and their friends talking about, I've been thinking about joining the Marine Corps lately. And they're like, yo, dude, I know this dope ass recruiter, bro. He's over in Tom's River, Eboch, bro. Cool dude. Here's his number. I have it in my phone. Right. That's one scenario. The other scenario is they hear their friend talking about joining the Marine Corps, and then they say, bro, I went to do an interview with them, bro. Dude, guy hasn't stopped blowing me up every single day for 6 months, bro. I had to block the dude's number. The guy's a prick, da 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 da. And that's the thing. It's either, okay, well, which one are we gonna be?
Yeah.
And that's and then like you said, you were talking about, the stress levels. A lot of times we get so overwhelmed with the stress of the numbers on the duty that we think that it makes more sense to just keep freaking, calling the people that ghosted us. Like, bro, and that's a whole nother tangent. Like when people say, oh, like when a kid no shows your interview or your appointment, sorry, and someone's like, go find him. Oh, you're right. Yes, I'm gonna go find the person who purposely didn't show up today because that makes sense. And then that shows my humanity. Like, bro, no. Like, you know what, man? That's it. You didn't show up to the appointment, bro. We set an appointment, whatever. But now, when I see you in the community, I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to be like, hey, bro, you know that, like, you wasted my time, right? Like, I set an appointment with you. You made me look like an idiot. Like, what the hell? And then that's it. Or that might bring it in, So I think a huge takeaway from me, like, from this episode is really just one, humanity, and two, talking about the environment that you're living in, and then your mentality through it all. Like that's a lot of what I'm taking away from this is just, bro, it's on you at this point. Like like you said, like you're in the Marine Corps 13 years or maybe 8 years, whatever it is. Like you're not a boot Marine, you're not a brand new Marine. Like at this point, you know what you got to do, and if you're not getting the help that you need, then you got to be vocal about it and you got to say something, because at the end of the day, if you're not getting the help but you're not willing to say something about it, then it's your fault too. So I don't know about you, man, but what do you have any last words or any kind of last thoughts that you have, anything that you want to say to anybody about whether it's introvertedness, whether it's something that worked for you, whatever's on your heart that you kind of want to just throw out there to anybody?
Honestly, just I think I've said most of it, most of my piece about it.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. It's one of those things where you have to take a look in the mirror, because yes, at the beginning my office wasn't helping me, but I wasn't doing anything to help myself. I wasn't asking for the help, and so I'm as guilty, and that's why I don't blame them for it, because everybody has their own situations, everybody has their own things going on. I didn't do what I should have done to help myself. So you have to be vocal. You have to find what works for you. Talk to other recruiters in your station, in your substation, your station, whatever it is, and find out what works for them, what they're doing. The littlest thing can pay dividends beyond anything you can even imagine. The interactions, and when they, it's getting out of uniform and being out in your community just as a person really helps. Because like what we've talked about, they see you then as a human. They now have a new idea of what Marines really are.
Yeah.
And that changes their whole perspective. But never be afraid of recruiting is difficult. And I said this a lot on the duty. It never gets easy, or it's never easy, but it does get easier.
Very true.
Yeah. So it was definitely an experience, one that I won't ever forget. Wouldn't volunteer to do it, go back, mainly because I know I'd probably get stuck back in Jersey, and then my wife would be here and be 3 more years without her. But the environment is key. Environment of who you're with, because especially as Marines, we are trained and we are bred as it's about the Marine Corps. So when you go on recruiting duty, you do have sometimes this isolation of it's just you.
Yeah.
But if you have that environment in the office where you're thinking it's not about you, I mean, Marines will run through gunfire to pull one of their buddies out of out of danger, but they won't run across the street just to run across the street.
Yeah.
Because in that instance, it's not about them. That's the way we think. And
Yeah.
on recruiting duty, you have to continue to think like that. It's not about me. It's about us.
Ooh, wow.
And once you get that mindset, you have that environment where it is about the us.
Mm-hmm.
Things become easier because we're more willing to do things for others than we are for ourselves.
Amen.
So that's all I really got on this.
Bro, wow. That's profound. It's about us. And that's a great way to end it because it's the truth, man. Like a lot of times I think that when we come on recruiting duty, you know, and it's different for me because I'm not a fleet Marine. Like, I'll be honest, like it's very different for me. Like my experience on recruiting duty is very different than the active duty Marine because the active duty Marine, they only know one thing for 12 years or however long it is. So it's very different. And you know, and just my lasting point is like you're saying, it's about us. But what happens is you come from the Marine Corps recruit from the Marine fleet, and now you're not surrounded by Marine Corps things anymore. So you suddenly have this feeling of like loss. Like you have this feeling of like this lost identity. Like, yeah, cool, I wear my uniform every day, but like I don't do Marine Corps things. Like I don't do, you know, I don't go to formation. I don't go to chow. I don't go to a chow hall. I don't, there's probably not even a medical facility for me to go to. Like literally nothing that I've done for the past 13 years is the same anymore. So now you feel alone, even though you're in an office with 3 or 4 other Marines, but now you're in an office with 3 or 4 other Marines that you've never met. And you're all very different. You're all different MOSs. You're all from different parts of the Marine Corps. You're all at different stages of your career. So now it's like a melting pot of an office. And you also feel like you're alone. And now you have to build this camaraderie and you have to build this team. And until you realize that it's about us, that's when you start winning, and that's when things start changing, and that's when your attitude changes, and that's when recruiting duty will become easier.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And it's like you said, you have all different environments, and you're in an office, and yeah, you're surrounded by Marines, but unlike for me in the air wing, when I'm in my work center, we're all pulling the same direction for the exact same goal. When you're in the recruiting office, yes, you're all pulling for the station's mission, but you're also pulling for your own mission. And so there does have that isolation of, okay, I'm working this, you're working this, and there's not that cohesion. But if you get that cohesion and you're like, my mission letter doesn't count, I'll take the butt chewing for writing a 0, but the station made mission, and next month I've got the extras to cover up the slack. It's about the station making mission, or it's about us.
Yeah.
Suddenly it becomes easier, and the environment becomes better, and you feel like you're all pulling for the same thing.
Amen.
So.
Well, thank you, man. I couldn't have said it better myself, man. It took 79 episodes to get to It's About Us. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate your time, brother. I'm thankful that, the duty, as hard as it was, you learned and you gained from it. I'm glad that things are going well with your family. I'm glad that things are going well with your career. I'm glad that you're still in the Marine Corps, because there was a point where I thought you were not going to be in the Marine Corps. So I'm very happy that you're still with us.
There was a point where I thought that too. I was like, this is it. I'm done. But
Yep. But hey, man, you saw it through. You made it off the duty, bro. And, again, thanks for your time, brother. And I hope to talk to you soon, man.
Definitely. It's my pleasure, man. I appreciate the opportunity to come on here.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.